بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Most welcome to the Rise of the Novel, our course, in which we have already taken about 7-8 lectures with the introductory lecture. They are 8. This is lecture number 8, and as I said many times, after the background lectures at the start, there will be a time, the greater part of the course, in which we deal with the novel itself. I believe that the best kind of approach to the study of the novel is to grapple with the novel itself, not to talk about it. Talking about it is necessary in the background lectures. It was logical for us to talk in detail about the various elements that affected the rise of the novel since the end of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th century. We discussed the various aspects of the rise of the novel, the elements, the factors, the revolutions, the characteristics, the major novels, the major artists and writers, the focus of attention, and the major drawbacks or weaker points or demerits or disadvantages. Now, we already had a very good idea about the nature of the novel, and also about Daniel Defoe himself and about Robinson Crusoe. We are well into the middle of the course, almost. So it is time, as I said, for us to deal automatically with the novel itself, to see how far what we said about that from the beginning, about the rise of the novel, theoretically applies to the novel itself in practice. And as usual, you have the contents in this lecture. The contents of this lecture, we're going to have the preface to the novel to deal with it, chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. It's a very ambitious project, a very ambitious plan, because we will talk about the chapter and then we will study the chapter itself. So please pay attention, concentrate, so during the coming moments we cover all these items, inshallah. Okay, just a quick reminder about the preface. What is a preface? A preface is a number of pages at the start of the novel in which the novelist devotes some focus and some attention and some time to talk to readers about the novel, the age, the mentors, the patrons who supported him, justifying the writing of the novel itself. Since the novel was new and since not everyone welcomed the novel, it was customary for the novelist to come up at the start and write these few pages in justification or in explanation, trying to break the ice between himself and the reader from the very beginning. Usually the preface doesn't have to do with the novel, with the narrative, with the story, or with the plot. It is just some notes that the writer offers us to explain certain things, to emphasize, for example, the fact that this is not a novel. It is a history, it is a book of adventures, it is travels, it is some tales about different places and different times. So readers, don't worry, I'm not talking about you. That was, a tendency among 18th century writers who escaped from censorship and who didn't want to have their novels prevented from publication. That is in the preface. Let us see what last time, as I remember, we had the preface itself in front of us. It is there. It was there and we discussed it. A summary of Robinson Crusoe, and we have the preface. an unnamed editor. I'm summing up the preface itself rather than giving it to you again, because it is not available in the text that is online on the Blackboard page, but it can be accessed in the book format. Many books have it, but the online versions actually do not include the preface. Anyway, you have it in the PowerPoint slides that are there in the previous lecture. An unnamed editor, an editor without a name, not a writer, not a novelist, but an editor. What is an editor? An editor is someone who corrects the writings of some other people. He has not written this himself. You know, the editor of this book, for example, is someone who reads the pages written by other people and makes some corrections. So Daniel Defoe, the writer of Robinson Crusoe, calls himself an editor, and this again is an attempt on his part to escape from censorship and to escape from people calling him a novelist. He explains his reasons for offering us the narrative we are about to read. As he said, justifying himself. Why is he giving us such a story about Robinson Crusoe? And look at the line in red, or the phrase in red that I have highlighted to you. He does not mention the name or story of Robinson Crusoe. He doesn't say this is the story of Robinson Crusoe clearly, explicitly. He doesn't say it's a novel about Robinson Crusoe. It's a story about Robinson Crusoe. It's a narrative about Robinson Crusoe. What does he do then? What does he say? He describes the narrative, the story, the whole book as a private man's adventures. Go back to the slides about the disadvantages of the novel in the 18th century, the time of the rise of the novel, and you will remember that writers preferred not to refer to the novel as a novel, but they gave the novel other names like adventures, for example. And this is what Daniel Defoe does here. He describes the narrative as a private man's adventures, not the writers, but he is the writer now, as we agreed, is an editor. And the editor is giving us the adventures of a private man and focuses on its realism. The editor, or Robinson or Daniel Defoe, focuses on the realism of the whole book. He is saying it's realistic. That is to say, the opposite of realistic is imaginary or fictional. It is factual, factual from fact rather than fictional. Readers, this is realistic. This is something that is just a history of fact, you know. It is not fiction, it is not narrative, it is not story, it is not a plot, according to Daniel Defoe. But we know that it's a novel, of course. He claims it is modest and serious, and that it has an instructive value, teaching us to honor the wisdom of Providence, the Creator. Thus, the editor asserts he is doing a great service to the world in publishing Crusoe's tale. It's a tale again. It's a tale, it's a book of adventure, it is a history of facts, and it teaches readers some morals, according to the writer, of course. Let us comment on the preface and sum it up again so you can learn what I mean by focusing on the preface. If Daniel Defoe published the novel as a novel in 1719, it would not be published at all. That was the date in which the novel was published. So if he called it a novel, then nobody would be ready at all to publish it, because novels were not welcome, okay? He does not call the novel a novel. He doesn't call it a novel. He calls it a history. He calls it something else, as we agreed. He does not call it a novel. He calls it history or adventure or tales. He gives it the name of history or a narrative of fact or a book of adventures. He insists it is realistic, not fictional. This is all we read We read all these pieces of information in the other previous slide. He insists that it is realistic, it is not fictional at all. He says he's just the editor and not the writer of the story, escaping from censorship. We learn from this that he avoids censorship through these steps. Okay, this is all about the preface, and it is the same as in any other novel in the 18th century, writers providing us with prefaces. In chapter 1 of the novel, and we have to know, and please notice this, if you buy the book in book format from Jarir or by Ken, rather than read it online, you will find that after the heading of the chapter, chapter 1, it is called the Start in Life. It is called Start in Life, as you can see here. Chapter 1, Start in Life, you know. That is the title of chapter 1 as it appears to you in the PDF file. That one, Robinson Crusoe Acrobat Reader. But there are books in bookshops publishing the novel in its original form. It has the title page, it has the pictures, it has the illustrations, and we do not just have Start in Life, but we have a few lines at the beginning of the chapter after the title, in which the author sums up to us the chapter in general. Do you understand? But here you have it like that. Okay, in what happens in chapter 1, there is a man, a young man about 23 years old. His name is Robinson Crusoe. He records his own life story. He talks to us about what happened to him, beginning with his birth in 1632. And notice the red line here, the red word, the word in red. Now, when was the novel published? It was published in the year 1719. At that time, the writer insisted that the story that he is giving us does not talk about 1719, which is the 18th century in England, but it is a book about 100 years back. The year 1632 means the 17th century, of course. In the English city of York, and we will read this shortly. His father is German, you know. Why is, we will talk about it. Don't let me jump into the chapter. But I prefer that we have a quick look at the chapter from the start, and then we take some passages from the chapter itself. That's the name of his father, and that's his own name. Crusoe is the youngest of three brothers. They are three. The eldest one is a soldier. The second one has vanished, has disappeared mysteriously. We have no idea about him. The youngest son in the family is Robinson Crusoe himself. His father encourages him to take up the law, to study the law, but Crusoe's inclination is to go to the sea. His desire, his utmost desire, is to go to the sea. His family strongly opposes this idea. They are against him. They want him to stay at home, and his father gives him advice, a lecture on the value of accepting the middle class in life, staying at home and not taking on any adventure at all. Let us try to have a part of the chapter first. Yes, read it quickly so we can be ready to answer some of the questions that I have given you here. Here, I is the eye of the speaker. That is Robinson himself. Notice that he is going to talk about everything in the novel. There is no other character at all. I was born in the year 1632 in the 17th century in the city of York in England, of a good family, though not of that country. That good family does not come from England because his father is a foreigner. of Bremen. Bremen is German, of course. It's a German city. So his father is German and he is not British. So reader, don't worry, I'm not talking about England. This is all about foreigners and about foreign places and about foreign times. Do you understand? Escaping from censorship. He, that is to say his father, got a good estate by merchandise. He was a trader. He was involved in money, trade, and he became rich in this way. But if you look at the next sentence, the whole paragraph, this is a whole paragraph, you will find that it consists only of 2 sentences. This is sentence number 1, okay, until here. And then starting from this, you have the second sentence. See how long? We said that a lot before in the disadvantages of the novel. The sentences are long in this way, very long sentences, starting from he until me. I had 2 elder brothers, as I said in the slide, one of whom was lieutenant, and he was killed, I think, yes, he was killed by the battle near Dunkirk against the Spaniards. What became of my second brother, I never knew. In the narrative, in the story, we have no idea what happened to his second brother, any more than my father or mother knew what became of me. So we have no idea about his brother. His father and mother do not have any idea about him, about Robinson Crusoe. Individualism. He lives alone. He lives for himself. He lives only for his desires, for his pleasures, you know, not caring about his father or mother. Notice that I'm just highlighting certain lines. I leave it for you to read the whole text at home. If you can finish it, that would be quite lovely and useful. He is the 3rd son of the family, and his head, from very early in life, his head began to be filled very early with rambling thoughts. He was convinced of so many things very early in life, like everyone else in the 18th century. Everyone else in the 18th century, you know, was interested in increasing his store of money, his treasures, and in exploring and traveling and knowing the whole world. This is what he says from the very beginning: I am an 18th century individual. I will be satisfied with nothing but going to the sea. The utmost desire for me is to go to the sea, and my inclination, my desire and tendency to this led me so strongly against the will and the commandments of my father. Now we have 2 wills, the will of the individual and the will of the father. The individual wants to go to the sea. The father wants the son to stay at home. So he is against, though his father advises him, and though there are entreaties and persuasions of his mother, his father and mother and friends, all those tell him stay at home and don't go to the sea. But he prefers to go against all those people. There was something fatal. He tries to justify that to himself. And then the whole chapter, ladies and gentlemen, talks to us about what his father told him, what his mother told him, what his friends told him, that it would be better for him to stay at home and not to go to the sea and to waste his time having adventures, being young and being still not very well educated. So his father is wise. He gives him serious advice, counsel, that is to say advice, and all this. You can read it, but if you look here, you will notice I, and after he tells us what happens with his father, he goes back to himself. I. All the time referring to himself, interested only in himself. Look at what I have written here. I wish it is clear. You can find it clearly in the file on the Blackboard page, inshallah. What is it that you can notice? I wish you could notice it yourself. Okay, let me go through the pages again. See? What is it that you can notice here? There is no dialogue. The novel doesn't contain any dialogue at all. Almost no dialogue. You understand? Here no dialogue, only Robinson speaking. He sums up for us the speeches between himself and everybody else. We depend on him for information. No character is allowed to speak in front of us. It is a demerit, of course. The speech by his father, the advice by his father is just reported to us. It is summed up. Robinson does not at all give us the speeches of other people. It is only Robinson talking. I say I observed, repeating I observed, because he says I observed and then he repeats I say. Let me remind you that I said that I observed the tears run down his face. Tears, we said that before. In the 18th century novel there is sentimentalism, people crying over any occasion. And the tears sincerely affected Robinson, and indeed who could be otherwise. And I resolved that the tears of his father, the crying of his father, touched the heart of Robinson Crusoe. So he decided not to think of going abroad anymore, but to settle at home according to my father's desire. This is what he says in one sentence. Notice, this is what he says here, starting from here until the word desire. He listened to his father, he was touched by his tears, but deplorably, alas, a few days wore it all off. After a few days, what happened? He changed his mind completely. In short, to prevent any of my father's further importunities, in a few weeks after, I resolved to run quite away from him. As he said before, against the advice of everyone. And here, in one sentence, he says he listens to his father, and in the next one he says, no, I'm not going to listen to my father anymore. So there is a lot of hesitation in Robinson, of course, a lot of hesitation in his personality. And being there, notice I say, being one day and being there, I say, repeating himself, I consulted, he gives us his decision, I consulted neither father nor mother nor anymore, nor so much as send them word of it, but leaving them to hear of it as they might, without asking God's blessing or my father's, without any consideration of circumstances or consequences. Being an individual, insisting on his desires, on his pleasures, on his freedom, on seeing the world, on change and liberty, he forgets all about all those things. But he hesitates. There is hesitation, and then he goes back to his mind, to his father, back to his mind, to his father, etc. If we go back to the PowerPoint slide, when does the novel start? 16th, 19th, 17th, 18th centuries? Of course, the 17th. But we have to know that it talks about the 18th century. What happens to Robinson's second brother? He dies, he vanishes, he disappears. Yes, he disappears. He works as a lawyer or a sailor? No, he vanishes. Chapter 1, we said so. He prays to God when he is in trouble. He prays to God for deliverance, to save him. When he finds that he doesn't know anything and that there is danger facing him, he prays. So the question is this. There are two questions actually, or three questions. What is the most obvious thing about Robinson's character? Hesitation, honesty, liveliness, kindness. He is hesitant, we said. He hesitates all the time. He doesn't know how to take a decision. But the only thing that he knows of is that he wants to go to the sea. But he oscillates. Sometimes he listens to his parents, to his friends, and to some acquaintances. But most of the time he listens to his mind. And this makes him quite hesitant. Another two questions. Robinson fears for his life and prays to God for deliverance when? When does he pray God? When he is in trouble, when he gets married, when he goes home, when he starts sailing. First choice, when he is in trouble. Robinson's parents advise him. Do they advise him to stay at home, or to go to the sea, or to search for money, or to search for adventure? I think you know the answer, and it is again number one. Okay? In chapter 2, Crusoe Robinson Crusoe, at the end of chapter 1, he has a friend. Okay? Here, he says goodbye to his friend. He doesn't care. If he doesn't care about his parents, how could he care about his friends, you know? So Crusoe parts with his friends and proceeds to London by land, where he meets a sea captain who proposes that Crusoe accompany him on an upcoming merchant voyage. The highest, utmost desire for Robinson is to have voyages, to go to the sea, to discover and explore new lands, to know more. And as we said when we explained individualism, don't forget, please, the book from which we quoted. What Ian Watt says about Robinson Crusoe. What does he say? It is individualism that depends on money. So the first thing that he does is to write to his family for money that he can invest, that he can play with, that he can increase. He has just started his sea life. He has no knowledge about it, but he knows that the quickest path to becoming rich is to trade and to increase the amount of money he has. Remember also what Ian Watts said. He said that individuals in in Daniel Defoe's novels and in Robinson Crusoe keep giving us a record of the money they have every time. And we will see this. Let us look at the novel. Where is chapter 2? Chapter 2. Here. That evil influence which carried me first away from my father's house, again repeating the word I say, the same influence, he went to Africa in order to explore. It is called Guinea. I just want to give you a picture of how he records the money he has. So in my pocket, having money in my pocket and good clothes upon my back, this is the only thing that he needs, having money. And then look with me for any mention of or reference to money and trade. There is trade, you know, he wants to trade. I increased very considerably, you know. I carried about 40 pounds in such toys and trifles as the captain directed me to buy. These 40 pounds I had mustered together by the assistance of some of my relations, and he gives us a record of the money that he has. You know, again, 5 pounds, 300 pounds. He was delighted. He was very happy to see that his job as a merchant, as a trader, is flourishing and prospering and succeeding. See, these are the things that I have highlighted to show you that the individual, according to Daniel Defoe, believes that it is money that makes the individual. Very important for the individual not to rely on the advice of his parents, but to rely on the protection and the warmth of money. That was the kind of people or young men at that time. To cut short, we are in chapter 2. To cut short this melancholy part of our story, our ship being disabled and 3 of our men killed and 8 wounded. See how many numbers? 3, 8 numbers in general. We were obliged to yield and were carried all prisoners into Salé, a port belonging to the Moors. The Moors are the Moroccans. He is now in Morocco as a prisoner. He is taken as a prisoner. I want you as a slave, you know. Of course, he was perfectly overwhelmed. He's very sad. Why is he very sad? That's a good question. Of course, being a prisoner makes him very sad, but there is something more important than being a prisoner. Being British, being colonialist, belonging to the empire over which the sun never sets, gave him reason to feel that he is superior, that he is powerful. Remember the table that we had before. And suddenly he becomes a prisoner. Prisoner to whom? Not to Europeans, not to the French, the Germans, the Italians, the Spanish, or the Belgians. No. He is prisoner to the Moors, to the Muslims. And this makes him very, very overwhelmed and sad. You know, and he has a master, a patron, the one who has taken him home as prisoner. Here I meditated nothing but my escape. We said that the French Revolution taught people to look for freedom and liberty. And here he wants escape, freedom. And I thought of any method and found no way that had the least probability in it. Nothing presented to make the supposition of it rational. Look at this. I had nobody to communicate it to that would embark with me. I had no friend, no one to help me, no fellow slave. Who are the people that he wanted to meet in prison that could help him, that could make friends with him? No Englishman. So he is looking for a friend from his own skin color. No Englishman, no Irishman, no Scotchman there, but myself. And he stays there for 2 years. But the writer, of course, jumps that period, that gap in the novel, and he doesn't talk about it a lot. After 2 years, he sums up that period, not talking to us a lot about it, because, of course, readers in England at that time didn't want to read about their fellow creatures taken as prisoners. That would be, of course, silly. That is chapter 2. Question: on his first voyage, what does Robinson do to achieve himself as an individual? Of course, trying to make more money. What is a narrative gap? As I said now, 2 years not covered at all. It is a section in the story that is not covered. Why is Robinson not described in detail as a prisoner? Because he is British, and readers in Britain would not welcome such a story, of course. Robinson is not described in detail as a prisoner. This is called what? A narrative gap. It is called a narrative gap, a place in the novel that is not covered at all. In chapter 3, we read about the story of Robinson Crusoe trying to deliver himself from that custody or that prison, dealing with Ishmael and then with Juri, the Muslims who were with him in prison, and he kills one and he takes one as a slave. So he changes from being a slave into a master. He pulls a gun on him and tells him to return to shore or else be killed. Crusoe then asks Juri whether he will accompany him and serve him faithfully, and Juri agrees. So he turns from being a slave into being a master, and he practices that on Juri, the young Muslim boy, Moroccan boy, who becomes automatically a slave to Robinson. As a prisoner, Robinson manages to escape because, of course, he is regarded by the author as powerful and skillful. He is British, so he has all the knowledge and all the skill needed in order to escape from prison. Is Defoe a colonialist writer? What is colonialist writer? We explained that before. A writer who believes that England is better than any other place and that the British people are better than any other person on earth. Yes, he is, of course, a colonialist. As you can see, I have tried to cover the most important things in the 3 chapters, and they are going to be wrecked. The ship will be destroyed, you know. Notice that in the previous pages we are now, this is page 44, you know. All these pages tell us that he went on a voyage, and then the ship had to suffer from shipwreck, but they were saved. Before they are saved, he prays to God. When he is enslaved, he prays to God. When he is saved, he becomes better and he forgets all about God. Please read as much as you can from these 3 chapters because they are very important for you. But I would like to tell you that all these 3 chapters repeat one thing, that Robinson is a British individual who feels the desire to go to the sea in order to explore and to know more and to have more money, as was everyone else in his age. It tells us also that Robinson Crusoe is full of hesitation. Also, the age was full of hesitation. People hesitated between religion and science, and he is an example of young men at his time. It tells us that he forgets all about the advice of his parents and listens only to himself and to what he wants to do, which is to gain more money. I will leave you for a while to come back next time with the next lecture, inshallah, in which we deal with another 3 or 4 chapters. I hope you enjoyed and benefited by this quick lecture. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.